Hello again there, friends. It's your old pal B-Sox, and we're in my basement. Joined by Andy Hall. Hello, Andy.
Good to be here.
We're from a certain radio station in Des Moines that plays a lot of rock.
I always had this theory that a rock and jock format would be awesome.
You did?
Where you could play rock music, but you're also sort of a sports talk station.
They do go hand in hand, and if you've watched ESPN over the last couple of years, it's been like all their music going in and out of commercials is rock.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
and
I about S my pants one time when I heard Shine Down going into a break or something. I was like, what? Shine Down? Really?
then there are the rock fans that just hate sports.
Yep.
But we wouldn't play the kind of music they'd want to hear anyway.
I'm just depressed about life and everything in general, so.
Just play Shine Down all day.
What's wrong with Shine Down?
Nothing wrong with Shine Down.
Nothing wrong with Nickelback either, and you can take my word for that.
I'll second that.
There you be people like, you, Andy Hall and B-Sox.
The people we don't want watching this have already tuned out.
We're joining you again. A couple years ago, we did something called Unsanctioned, where Andy and I sat around and talked about bowl games, which was a lot of fun, and I think we want to continue that tradition. We took how many years off?
At least 3.
Now we have multiple cameras and stereo equipment and
Fancy.
Diet Cherry Coke. So
Yeah, I don't have a sponsor here tonight, so.
we'll get you one.
Okay.
We'll find some sponsor for you, and we'll shamelessly plug it until they send us money.
Who can I endorse?
I don't know. You think about it.
Okay.
Also, if you're interested in the fantasy football side of things, you can find Andy 515 Fantasy Football on Facebook.
I mean, I've been playing fantasy football for over 20 years, so.
Did you do it when it was all like you had to go through and chart it out yourself?
Yeah, we also had to wait until the next day, essentially, to get like the final scores because the newspaper would have all the statistics.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have those like readily available or during like an in-game, in progress
You
type
don't have
of thing.
ESPN telling you what you're doing right now.
Back when I got started back in 1993, I mean, players like Thurman Thomas, players like Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders.
So tonight, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes and Tennessee Volunteers as they'll take part in the TaxSlayer Bowl.
Which I made a stupid joke on Facebook and Twitter about. Because of the name Slayer,
Yeah.
I bet it'll be, if nothing else, it'll probably be the best halftime performance of all the bowl games. And I wondered if they would play Angel of Death or South of Heaven.
I don't know about that.
Or Rain and Blood.
That would be cool.
Yeah, it would.
We're going to start with Iowa and Tennessee. TaxSlayer Bowl, just to give you the rundown of it, it'll be in January 2nd down in Florida. Jacksonville. Isn't that where Jake Rudolph's from? I know he's from Florida, but I can't think of where he's from.
That's a great question that I just don't have the answer to right now.
Yeah, it sucks. The game will be on ESPN, and it'll kick off about 2:20 our time.
Jake is from Weston, Florida. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, it's Florida. It's all effed up. And
Jacksonville is it's a rough town, from what I'm told.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It might be nice around the stadium. I don't know.
Yeah, they usually are, just so they can get money.
Unless it's the Cotton Bowl.
Unless it's...
That's a really rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Have you ever been there?
No, but I've heard about it and kind of seen some pictures, and it's like...
The neighborhood around the Cotton Bowl. You don't want to be walking around there after dark.
It's like, I don't know if I ever need to go to a game here. But Tennessee, for those of you playing along at home, is from the SEC. They're in the East Division. They finished the season 4th in the East with a 6-6 record. So they split the season. They finished with a conference record of 3-5. So... won 3 of their non-conference games, 3 SEC games, which the SEC is just... it's not as good as it was, I don't think, but it's still pretty good.
The hallmark of this Tennessee team is the fact that they have had difficulty finishing games. They've been competitive in virtually all of their games within the SEC, which is saying something considering the competition and the fact that they're probably not getting the same caliber of recruits that a Florida would get.
Yeah. The surprising thing when I first looked at Tennessee this week after you heard about the bowl game was I looked at their stats, and it's kind of an interesting group because you expect an SEC team to have a lot bigger numbers, especially from the running backs and even their wide receivers. And their top rusher this year, kid named Jalen Hurd, only had 777 rushing yards.
Break it down, though, by the number of carries he got throughout the course of the season, and that comes out to about a 4.5 yard per carry average, which is pretty good in the NFL. In college football, pretty mediocre. Compare that to what the Iowa Hawkeyes laid down this year, and they have that true number one running back, of course, in Weisman, who took a big step back this year.
Yeah, he, for whatever reason this season, like, they would be like, yeah, he's got 80 yards, and I go, where? I have no idea where this guy rushed to get his yardage.
By sheer volume, more often than not, he'd end up with respectable stat lines. But his yard per carry average was actually way down from where it's been in years past. He only averaged just under 4 yards per carry. And again, going back to what I said about Tennessee's starting running back, averaging 4.5, that might be a good number in the NFL, but in college football, it's actually not very good.
No, I see this game. It's one of those games where you can match your wins from last year. And I don't care what coach you're talking to. They probably won't say it out in the open. But it's one of those deals where they don't care about the game. If they get the win, hey, that's great. They want the month of extra practice to develop their guys, go into spring with hopefully a good foot forward, and, have a good spring, go on and have a better summer, good fall.
Well, this isn't Peyton Manning's Tennessee. Let's put it
that
way.
And at 6-6, they came on later in the season. Tennessee did. This was a surprisingly good season for them, from what I've kind of read, because they thought, it's going to be a rebuilding process, or we're just not very good and we have to get better. They thought maybe they're a year away from this kind of finish. So,
well, the SEC, no matter what end of it you compete in, the East or the West, you know that you're competing against teams that I alluded to earlier. Typically get the best recruits in the country. Those players are typically not going to a Tennessee.
No.
Long gone are the days of Peyton Manning, in other words. If you look at the offensive numbers, and you alluded to the lack of a passing game for the most part for Tennessee. In years past, correct me if I'm wrong, but anytime Iowa's ever faced a team that doesn't pose much of a passing threat, it's been a pretty dominant performance out of the Iowa Hawkeye defense.
Yeah, well,
Georgia Tech comes to mind right off the top of my head.
Georgia Tech did a triple option, though. And I'll never forget, you remember Norm Parker, the former coordinator at Iowa? He goes, everybody's talking about this triple option that they're running. He goes, everybody was running that 50 years ago, and we prepared for it then, and we're preparing for it now. But usually, okay, I'll put it this way. Iowa, traditionally, when they go up against a team that passes, they'll give you 20 to 20. They'll absolutely, get your short yardage plays, your 5 to 15, somewhere in there. They might break for 20 or something every once in a while.
By virtue of a shorter field, though, it makes it more difficult to get into an end zone when a defense has that much less room to have to defend.
Yeah.
Things become compressed inside the 20. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but Iowa has always typically had more problems with teams that run a spread type of offense.
Yes.
And we've seen that even in recent years. And looking at a team like Iowa State this year, which is another game that Iowa should have won.
They get that because they don't, send that blitz a whole lot. The quarterback, if all the linemen are, taken up right then, quarterback, if he can run half as well as some of them can, they're going to get yards just because they don't have anybody down. They play that zone where everybody drops back, and then it's like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to leave the middle of the field open. So, yeah, they'll get yards. If he's a running quarterback, which, let me look up his...
Well, I've got it pulled up here. I can tell you that I can't tell who their starting quarterback is by looking at the statistics and not knowing Tennessee. You might have to look up who the actual starter is. If it's Joshua Dobbs, who has less passing statistics than Justin Worley, Joshua Dobbs is the running threat.
Yeah, he is.
In terms of that offense. He's the second best runner in terms of statistics for the Tennessee Volunteers.
So what do you think's going to happen here? I've got kind of my idea of what I think's going to happen, but I'm not, it's not one of those years where I think, this is 100% what I think's going to happen, what they're going to try and do, what they're going to try,
right.
Try and stop. So.
Here's my take real quick, since you're still formulating your opinion. How many seniors does this Iowa Hawkeyes team have? Is it a senior heavy team?
No,
or are they mostly youngsters?
It's a lot of their line. I think it's one of those another year where you're going to lose 2 or 3 of those guys.
So it's not one of those years where you're losing a lot of guys.
No, I don't. I think you have some guys that are. It's definitely going to be a game that is going to set up for next year. They want to give these guys experience.
The reason I ask is because if this is a senior-heavy team, considering how disappointing the regular season was on the whole for the Iowa Hawkeyes, they have that extra incentive to play harder on their way out. And this is a pretty good matchup, I think, for the Iowa Hawkeyes defense. Again, considering what I'm seeing in front of me in terms of statistics, there doesn't seem to be an insane threat from pass catchers, and the quarterbacks aren't putting up big passing yards. So it doesn't seem to me, other than maybe the threat of a rushing quarterback, to be the type of offense that's not going to match up well with Iowa.
I think the senior thing's a good point because nobody wants to go out on a bad foot.
No, they don't.
Tennessee, who, like we said earlier, is coming off a year where 6-6 was awesome for them, that's outstanding. Hey, we're 6-6. The problem I have with trying to formulate a really good opinion about this is how inconsistent Iowa was this year, where there were times they looked great, where they probably could have hung with a lot of the nation's top programs. I'm not saying they would have beat like an Alabama or anything like that, but they had parts of this season where they hung with these guys. They were just looked good. And then there's other times where they play a quarter or two, quarter and a half, somewhere in there of really good football, and then they just fell off. The Nebraska game, great example of that, where they gave up 17 points, 17 or 20, something. You know what I'm saying? It was a good lead. So
what's encouraging about this year's Iowa Hawkeyes team is that teams that have traditionally given them fits in the past, and that's not counting Iowa State in this case, but Big Ten competition, teams like Northwestern, for example, they came out and just flat out beat them.
Yeah.
You haven't seen that an awful lot from the Iowa Hawkeyes in recent years.
When it comes to January 2nd, I think Iowa wins. I mean, I think they win. I'm not sure how they do it. Because Wiseman, I think he's a senior, isn't he? I don't know if he comes out, has a big game. I do think they'll try and break DJK's passing record, or for reception record, excuse me, because Manley was close, and I think that's why they kept throwing to him against Nebraska.
Could be. Yeah, they don't want that name in the Iowa Hawkeye record books for much longer.
No, they do not. So I'm going to go Iowa on this one, just because the good was a lot better than we all thought it was going to be this year. If they can pull together the consistency a little bit, string together some drives, if Greg Davis pulls his head out of his ass, runs a game that actually helps his guys in the way of, hey, it's 3rd and long. We're going to try and catch him with a fake punt right here. Like, I'm seriously waiting for him to pull that out of the book.
If they're able to establish that running game early on with Mark Wiseman and others, the Iowa Hawkeyes will have no problem winning this game. They'll control the clock and keep the score relatively low, despite the 52.5 points, the over-under for the Vegas odds, which, with a 3-point Tennessee favorite, puts the final at, 28-25, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah.
I don't see it going that way. I think Iowa can hold Tennessee to less than 28 points. And
say maybe 17.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to guess, and it's just throwing a dart here, but I think 27 is a realistic number for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And for Tennessee, if Iowa has a decent game, I think 17 or 20 is about right. 27-20 will be my prediction.
All right, so we're both going with the Iowa Hawkeyes. More coming up here in a few minutes, but it won't be to you. You'll just have to click on another link. So see you in a second.
Way to go.